Department of Justice is considering breaking up Google. You likely read the news on that, but there's some bigger picture implications. Dan, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, this probably could warrant an entire show in itself. So you and I trying to hit this in a few minutes is going to, create challenges. So I'm going to really keep this at about 50,000 feet. But first and foremost, very interesting. We know Lena Khan has gone from, on the FTC side. This is DOJ, but there's been a strong urgency across regulators to show that it can make some hard decisions and take it to big tech. Google specifically related to its search. The first instinct that I had, Pat, when I saw this is, well, I think a lot of people have long believed that Google had, in some ways, created a monopoly, whether that's because its technology was just superior to everyone else's or because it was doing things like buying access to the Apple platform as restrictive. It has been the most successful search platform on the planet. And there's no indication that was going to change anytime soon, except we've now entered an era of generative AI, which is about to take the entire search industry as we know it, traditional search, and completely turn it on its head. You and I have talked about this, Pat, but about 75% of my searches now don't begin on Google anymore. Now, you and I we're tip of the spear. We are tech evangelists. We're early in the industry. We are, more techno optimists. We're trying new things, but this is the beginning of a wave of search being disrupted. Now, Google's investing big in Gemini. They're looking at building Gemini and applications that can go and probably up level, augment, replace, and displace certain search for its future business. But breaking up Google around search right now seems like, something that needed to be addressed a decade ago. And at this point, seems like a fleeting investment of time. What happens next? Let me just point to that really quickly because there's so much here, Pat, and I don't think we have the time to really dive into it. But the real question is, would they break up Google? Could they break up Google? And so I'm going to put my answer out there. One is yes, they absolutely could. Will they? I really doubt it. And here's my take is, like in Europe, it's always about raising money. Here, it's more about complexity of the law and the amount of time it would take to get through the legal proceedings to do this. Even if a judge ruled, you'd probably see anywhere from 3 at a minimum to 7+ years of appeals that would be going back and forth. And if you think about the speed of which tech moves over a 3 to 7 year period of time, how much would change and how much the industry could change. Second of all, the unwinding may or may not be good for consumers. Another major consideration, because consumer experience is part of the antitrust, constructive thinking. And then the third thing about it is, Pat, is I think if anything, if Google really did feel that it was going to lose this thing, I think they would do a self-inflicted breakup. That's really my take on it, is like in the end, if Google felt that they had no chance to win, they would be ruled against, they could not win an appeal, I think they would end up breaking themselves up by some different business units. Although I don't think that's likely, spinning off some of their big bets, maybe spinning off parts of like a YouTube end of things. I mean, YouTube, they think they paid like $1 billion for it. It's worth like 70, 80, 90 times that now. And the last thing I'll note is just, Pat, I really worry about the long tail. I really worry about the long tail here. So you break up Google, what's to stop next being Microsoft? What's to stop next being Apple? And again, I think it's major conflict in terms of the construct of antitrust to, sort of destroy and denigrate the experiences that these big platforms have created in the name of upping competition. Because I also think this shuts down some of the VC spend. And that's also a big place where people exit, which has already been slowed dramatically. So, Pat, so much to cover. I'm going to stop there just because I could talk 20 minutes about it. But those are my biggest top of mind thoughts.
Yeah, so antitrust has changed over the years, but I wanted to give a historical perspective on it. The DOJ wanted to break up IBM in 1969. It was thrown out in 1982. AT&T was I believe, the second largest employer in the United States at one time. It was broken up and separated, RBOX or regional bell operating companies. So it was broken up into what are called baby bells. And, if you still have dial tone in your house, those were one of the RBOCs out there, and it's split into 4 or 5 of those based on regions. Microsoft was actually judgment came down to break them up. That was in the year 2000. Judge Thomas Penfield Jackson said that he wanted to split it up to Windows and everything else. That was turned over on appeals in 2001. Microsoft agreed to a settlement, but I got to tell you, that whole effort put put Microsoft behind 10 years, right? Smartphones came out. You had search that came out. All of the bigger players out there basically were enabled by this happening. Apple almost was on its way to be going bankrupt, and just you can look at their numbers and their cash flow. They got a lifeline from, guess who? They got it from Microsoft. And what that was to do is Microsoft surely would have liked to kill Apple, but they wanted to do it in order to look like less of a monopoly. So, pretty clever here. The other thing that I look at is the new threat is China, right? And the discussion of, hey, do we, and I'm looking pan tech as opposed to just Google, do we break up a company? What are the national defense implications? I think for Google, I don't think they have that protection, right? I don't think that's going to be a very good emotional argument or something that could be overturned on some presidential decree. Meta, the FTC also targeted Meta through Facebook, and they wanted to break out Instagram and WhatsApp after the acquisition, even after how successful it had been. So we have a radically different antitrust leadership in place, but I do not think that it is out of question that Google could be broken up. Good point, Dan, on people maybe using generative AI first, but based on all of Google's profit, I'm not seeing any weakness in that at all.
No, that's just a trend line that I think, like I said, you're regulating things, and it's like the ninth inning and it's the last part of the game. And all I'm saying is everything's about to turn, and now you're going to break it up when there's new tech breaking through. I think you made a great point about the setback, though. Like if they spend the next 10 years litigating this, that will have major costs. I also love your point about China. All of our mega tech companies are required right now for the U.S. to maintain global technology leadership. The perception of that, right? Are we willing to shelf our technology leadership? We hear they're going after NVIDIA, they're going after Google. Like when these companies start getting pushed, doesn't that put some risk of giving China an opportunity to play catch up?
That's very valid argument. Which is why I brought it up. Like, no, I know. I know you said that. No, it's just, listen, it's just, I think when it would come to maybe some other companies, I think given that Google's in the ad business, I don't think they could use national treasure as a reason.